Welcome to the Change Coaching Center podcast. I have an awesome guest today. I'm really excited to have her. Her name is Maribel Rodriguez from DBT. So please talk about yourself.
Talk about myself. Yes. Maribel Rodriguez. I am a licensed clinical counselor. I own DBT Orlando and practice primarily a full DBT program. I'm also a retired Air Force veteran, retired in 2019 with 22 and a half years. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Well, that is awesome. So this is the reason why I wanted to do this with you today.
Yes.
I saw a movie. Thank you for your service.
Yes, I heard about it.
Okay, so me and my wife were watching it.
I know, I have to admit, I did not see it yet, but I have heard about it.
But it's okay. Me and my wife were watching it, and I like it really hurt a little bit. You know, like how ungrateful what some of these people are going through. And you're a veteran. Yeah. So first, let's talk about your experience in the military.
Yeah. So I did about 9.5 years active duty. So that's how I started as a intel analyst. So I did that.
That sounds important.
So I know it sounds probably a little more important than it actually is, but it was a really, really cool job. I did that for about 16.5 years. And so when I started, I will admit I had a phenomenal active duty experience. And I have to put that out there because it's not everybody's experience. Yeah. But my first duty station was Lake and Heath, England. So I joined a little bit older. I was like 21, and through a series of events, that was my first duty assignment. So I went to Lake and Heath, England to work with F-15 Eagles. I was at the 494th Fighter Squadron.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, did that for about 4.5 years, and you know, that was both the best and hardest experience probably that I've ever had, right? Because I was part of a fighter wing. During that time, we did a lot of deployments, right? We started bombing again over Iraq at that point during those years because I was there. Oh, yeah. I was there from 1997 to 2001. So that was right in the heart of like when we started going back over there and stuff like that. So again, probably the most rewarding experience I've ever had. Also the most challenging experiences I've ever had. But yeah, that was the start of my career. And then I did active duty. I was stationed at Lake and Heath, stationed in Miami, Southcom. So that was a joint assignment. And then I was stationed in Guam. Which is really cool. I'm telling you, like I do admit I had really great assignments.
Good.
And then I got out of active duty after Guam. I had to go to Qatar. So I went to Qatar for almost a year, so about 7 months. I was a single mom at the time, and my son was about 4. And so after that, just like could not do that again.
It was done.
I couldn't imagine leaving him for that long again. And so got out and joined the Guard, the Air National Guard.
So you didn't stop.
No, I know, right? Joined the Florida Air National Guard and did that from 2006 until I retired in 2019. And somewhere along the way, I reclassed, and so I cross-trained to become the chaplain. So I became the superintendent of the chapel corps for the Florida Air National Guard. So that was basically like helping ensure that airmen across the state of Florida under the Florida Air National Guard had all their religious services and needs met. So worked right alongside the wing chaplain of the 125th Fighter Squadron. So that was where I ended my career in Jacksonville. And then for Intel, I mostly worked with pilots. So 2 very, very different experiences, like pilots and then chaplains.
So do you consider yourself a warrior?
I think when I think of those terms, I am not sure that I would. Like, I loved serving my country. I definitely didn't go into it with this idea of like I want to be a warrior.
Got it.
Admittingly, my father was in the Army, and I lost.
That's usually how it happens, right?
It is. Yep, absolutely. And so my father actually died when I was 14 years old. He died the day after my 14th birthday, and I think that there was just this part of me that always wanted to do something or find something to feel more connected to him. And so I think the military was always that. And so on my father's side of the family, every single one of my uncles was in the military, and he had 6 brothers. Have lots of cousins, and that even today are in the military, all the forces, Army, Air Force,
the whole thing.
Marines, Navy. So I would say definitely my father's side of the family was very military oriented. So yeah, I think that's how I ended up there. But it was definitely not a like, I want to be a warrior as much as it was like, I wanted to see what this whole military thing was all about. And
obviously it was good.
22 years later.
No, you went all through.
Yes.
But do you know that as a society, we see you as a warrior?
Yes. I mean, I do understand that. You know, I get a lot of like, thank you for your service. Thank you. And, it feels awkward. It does. It in some ways, we appreciate it. I won't obviously speak for every military person, but, you know, for myself and certainly other military folks that I've spoken with, it's like, we appreciate it. And, right, it's like, you know, it's not why do what we do, right? 9 times out of 10, we do it because we do genuinely have a love and a commitment to our country and to service in general, right? To service of like humanity, the greater good, stuff like that. And
it is. You're even if you don't see active duty, the way I see it, you're still a warrior because you go. These 4 years, you leave your family with this risk. A lot of people can't do that. So
100%.
Thank you for doing it.
I've had people ask me, if I join the military, should I go? But I don't want to go to war. And I'm like, don't join.
Wait.
Don't join. Like,
I think I was one of those when I first met you. You were telling me about the Guard.
Yes.
And I said that, but how do you stay away from the war?
You don't. No.
How do you go in and just, can you request something?
Yes.
Put some paperwork.
Yes.
No war for me.
Yes.
No.
Yes. You'd be surprised, but a lot of people have that understanding. Like, I want to join the military. I just don't want to go to war. I'm like, I'm confused. I'm confused.
This is what it is. So it's just funny because now you're a counselor, so you're still helping people.
That's right.
How did that transition happen?
Man, let me think. So I left active duty, and then once I left active duty, I went and finished my bachelor's degree. And after that, I finished my bachelor's degree in business because I tried to do my degree while I was in active duty. It was just, you know, they pay for college while you're in there, but like most jobs, it's just not easy to just go to school and finish your degree. You're getting deployed and stuff like that. So it was a lot of starting. I think for my bachelor's degree, I think I had like 5 different schools.
Oh, wow.
Just with, each duty assignment and stuff like that. So I finished my bachelor's shortly after getting out of active duty. It was in business, and I was able to translate some of my military skills to do like a business analyst, which was a lot of IT, which, at the time, paid pretty well, sometimes I think people misunderstand, like when you leave active duty, while your rank maybe doesn't pay a whole bunch of money necessarily, you have all these other benefits that you don't get when you leave, right? Like I had to pay a gym membership all of a sudden, right? I had to pay for housing. I didn't get a food stipend. So there's all these other benefits that aren't thought about oftentimes. And so it was really hard leaving active duty, being a single mom, going to school full time.
Back, everybody's different, right?
Yes,
Everybody's a different person.
yes. Trying to get a job, and so I took, whatever job could provide a life for my son and I, and so a lot of that was in IT, like I said, business analyst, technical writing, which again financially was amazing, and I hated it. It sucked the life out of me.
So that's actually interesting that you say that, because that's one of the questions I have. There's a lot of statistics, right?
Yeah.
Like out of the homeless population, 1 in 10 of them are veterans, right?
Yeah.
And mental health, 5.2 million veterans experience behavioral health conditions, and suicide, 18 to 64 veterans commit suicide a day.
Yeah.
How did you survive that? Because I think that's important. If a veteran's watching, like, what do? You were able to transition because you're successful now. Your practice is successful. I know you're humble, but you are. Your practice is successful. You're successful. Your family. How did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was one thing for sure. I mean, I think that there was a combination of things, right? I think that when I think in hindsight now, and I had to learn about the idea of the 4 pillars of resilience, right? Emotional, physical, spiritual, and financial. I realized like I did have a lot of that in place, right? I had a really supportive family. My mom lived in Florida. I was able to come back here. I had my sister, my brother. So I had a really, really good emotional support system in place. And I think that was huge.
Also that helps.
Yeah, and I had a really strong spiritual background, right? I was, raised in the church as a Christian. Actually, while I was active duty, I was saved. So I was raised Catholic and became a Christian, and was saved while I was in the military in Guam. And so I think I had this really strong spiritual foundation already in place when I left active duty. And then I think I was fortunate, you know what I mean? I think my career as an Intel analyst and a couple of the places that I was at gave me some really helpful skills to translate into the sort of civilian world, right? When I was at Southcom, I was in charge of like our web design. And so I got to lead a team. And so there were very tangible skills, right? Okay. But that's not everybody's experience, right? Like, depending on your career, right? If you're, and I don't know this for sure, right? But I'm thinking of some careers that maybe are more challenging to translate into our world, right? If you're EOD, working with bombs, potentially depending on your experience in the services industry, depending on how those translate, you might be able to get a job, but how much are you getting paid? If you're if you're admin in the military and you leave, like, where are you starting? Where's your pay scale? And so you leave the military, and if you have 1 or 2 vulnerable areas, right, that makes you very vulnerable, right, to those things like suicide, homelessness, emotional disruption that you're talking about. And I do think I was fortunate in that I did have a lot of really strong pillars of resilience already in place. But I think that's I think the challenge is that not everybody has that, right? Not everybody has a really strong support system to come home to, right? You hear of a lot of veterans getting divorced while they're in active duty, right? You hear a lot of veterans, not having that community and support to come back to when they leave, or when they do come back. They come back to, right, like divorce, having lost custody of their kids. So they don't have that emotional support system. And then depending on, where their spiritual pillar was before they left the military. And, it's like, it's a 50-50, right? You can either find religion when you're in the military, depending on your experience, or you can lose it too, right? You could, definitely. When you see, a lot of death and destruction on, it's you can go either way. Yeah.
Well, it's really sad, like when I saw that movie, to see like that really we all know it happens. That's the funny part. As a society, we don't see it.
Oh, absolutely.
But we see it because I felt a little guilty, like I knew this. I mean, it's sad that you're a warrior, right? You leave to do this. Not everybody could do it, and then you come back and you're just left behind. I don't understand this. So, like, what do you think can help? In a small, I know from starting right now, I don't mean,
what do I
think
can help?
The system today? Like, what's a small little, like, thing that can make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think about my transition from active duty, certainly, and I had a small gap between active duty and the National Guard, and so I think, and I do want to say that I don't think the military does nothing, right? I do think they try, and I remember leaving active duty and having, different things set up to help me prepare. Okay. Hey, have you thought about a resume and things of that nature? But I think part of it is that, like, I think they don't know what they don't know. Right? I don't think. I like that. I don't think they know what to expect, and so I think transition and thinking about my job and all these things in advance, like, sounds good, right? And I think they are helpful, but I don't think that there's enough support on the back end, when they get there. Yeah, I don't think there's enough. I happen to, fall into meeting somebody who at the time it was in Robert Half was the company, and they took my military experience and they translated into a resume. But again, I just kind of fell into that, right? That wasn't something that the military pointed me to. There, you know what I mean? I didn't have. Admittingly, leaving active duty, I felt really, really unknowledgeable about the access that I had to the Veterans Affairs.
Really?
I actually, now it's been I retired in 2019, and I would say really, and I left active duty in 2006. So all that time, I would say really, it's only been in the last 2 years that I have really made use of all the benefits that I have within the Veteran Affairs. And you know, it's not that they don't put the information. I just think, again, you don't know what you don't know, and it feels really cumbersome. I mean, think about, you know, the healthcare system for you, right?
Yeah.
Like, the healthcare system is not an easy system, right? And you add into that people who are depressed, right? People who feel disconnected, who don't have really good support. It's not easy system to navigate, and so it feels really frustrating. It's easy to get hopeless. It's easy to, you know, bump into different roadblocks and just think, okay, then I guess this is just not for me, or I guess I don't qualify.
That's interesting.
Because again, it's there's things out there, but it's not. There's nobody sort of like really supporting you, right? Like
telling you, go get this from there, go this is
yeah,
there.
I mean, I just had this thought come to my mind as we're talking about it. Like, I remember when I joined the military, they had like, I think what they called like a buddy system, right? So when you're in processing is what they call it, right? Like, so your first like month, let's say in the military, like you have someone to check in with, you have someone telling you where to go, who to check in with, what is life in the military. I'm like, that's what we need, something like that, right? Like,
you just
I don't know, it just came like, let's
good.
get a buddy system.
Let's do it. Oh, good job. Yeah, I mean, because that makes sense. They do give the resources, but it's up to you to go.
Yes.
That's how they see it.
Yeah.
It's there. The
Yeah.
government says, we there. We
Yeah.
put the money into it. Now, when you left the military, did you feel that was going to be a problem? Like, when people leave it, do they feel like it's going to be hard for me to go to find a job or do this? Or do you think, I'm coming from the military, this should be
Yeah,
easy?
I think that you think it shouldn't be that hard, right? Like, I think, and I think here's the thing too, like, I do want to say, like, if you want to go or have the experience and connections to go straight into a government job, I see people thrive and succeed a little more when that's true.
Yeah, 'cause it's like the
right?
same-
So it's more like a lateral move. But if that's not your desire, and or if you don't have the job, the skill set, or the connections to do that, then I think you flounder a little bit more.
Yeah. And once they hit that wall, I'm pretty sure it's like you feel like, man, I just want to fought for you people, and I'm over, and they give up.
Yeah, and
like,
again,
forget
if you're thinking about, you know, people who maybe get out because they're having a hard time in the military, right? Maybe they came back from war and they're experiencing things like PTSD, depression, anxiety. So if I'm already experiencing that on the front end, and then I have to come out and I have all these other roadblocks and challenges, like, again, if you don't have a good support system in place, it becomes increasingly more difficult. Yeah.
I wish I knew how to, but I'm going to tell you one thing. We do, I don't know, TRICARE. Well, yeah, you know TRICARE.
I do.
But it's difficult to build. I don't know if you know, it's difficult to deal with them as an insurance company.
Yeah, it is, and I do.
So.
I mean, my practice is a self-pay practice, right? And my desire would be, I would love to work with more veterans, right? I would love to support and help more veterans, and as you said, right, it's really hard.
It is.
Right? For years, it was really hard to get into the VA system as a counselor unless you were a social worker, right? For years, they didn't hire anyone unless you were a social worker.
Why?
Because
you knew that's.
Well, I think social workers and therapists, they do the same job, but I think social workers have been around a little more, right?
Okay.
And the truth is, the military tends to want things that are more sort of like short term, quick fixes, and move you on,
and
right?
in fairness, it has to be because
yes,
the
there's a lot of us.
affordability.
Yes, right. And so I think when social work first started, I think that was more right of the mentality of you see a social worker for a very limited time, and then they connect you to the community. They connect you to other resources, and so I think, right now we know, right, social workers and therapists can work right alongside each other, provide the same exact service, same level of care, same level of treatment, same level of referrals. But again, therapists, mental health, LMHCs, they came around a little bit later. And so I think that's just knowing that is not true. Again, the Veterans Affairs have come around. They do now hire LMHCs.
Yep, I see that. And
so that's true. But I think, again, it's like hard, right? Because like you said, TRICARE is not easy.
It's not.
It's
we try. And they do out of network so to make it easier. But when you get to billing, you have to be able, and as a small practice, you have to be able to see this person for almost 6 months to a year before you see a penny. So that's almost impossible.
It is. I mean, and you think about a small private practice clinician, right? Like, not everybody can go 6 months to a year without a payment. I mean,
maybe one or two, but imagine a group of you're closed down. So there goes one barrier. So, but mental health is a big issue in the community, right?
Yeah.
You talked about PTSD. You want to elaborate on that?
I mean, I think, and I think too, like even for those of us, and I say those of us, speaking for myself, even for people in the military or veterans who are sort of thriving, if you will, right? And I'm really grateful for that, right? It doesn't come without its challenges, right? Like, I don't really talk about my military career, and I admittingly, most of my close friends and family don't know details about my experience.
I just found out today you've been in an F-15, and I was like, what?
And I think part of that is because
I can't imagine you with the helmet, talking about Roger, drop the bomb, no, whatever. I don't know what you do.
Yes, puking, when you do G's, all of that. But I think even those of us who sort of, are thriving and aren't homeless maybe, right? And, we still do experience some PTSD, I have a lot of, both military trauma and military sexual trauma that I've had to continue to work through, which is another big thing for women veterans specifically.
Yeah, that's coming out now a lot.
Yes. But it's, I'm sure it's not only women, right? Like, as we know, there always seems to be more statistics for women when it comes to sexual assault, sexual abuse, but we know that scale is probably less uneven than we think it is. Definitely. And stuff like that.
It's harder as a male to report.
It is.
I was sexually abused a lot.
Yeah.
And I just started talking about
that. Because, openly, right?
That was very hard. I was like, what?
Absolutely.
And if you tell someone, usually they say that wasn't. Come on, you got,
especially amongst other males,
right?
Like, and if you're younger,
what are you complaining?
Exactly.
But it's still the same thing. But so you experienced that. You don't have to get too
personal. No, sure.
So you experienced that there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Both in the military, and again, the PTSD is also like very sneaky because I'm a mental health counselor, right? And I think for a while I kind of ignored, right? And then you start talking to more veteran providers, and you start talking to other people, and you're like, oh yeah, I do avoid places with military folks. Oh yeah. I do avoid thinking about my military experience, and I don't really talk about it. And I do work really hard to stay away from men, and I can't counsel men. And, so then you start to realize, that's what PTSD looks like for me, right? Because it doesn't look the same for everybody, right? Some people are really dysregulated when they have a trigger, and some people are really withdrawn and avoid it at every cost. And so it does look different. But there's, I would say, probably very few military veterans who are living with some level of military trauma in some way.
Yeah, because it's hard. It's war. Yeah. Even, again, I after the movie, I was thinking, but I know there's some people that don't even get to see war, but I don't think that matters.
It doesn't, right? And especially if you think of the criteria for PTSD, right? Some of it you get PTSD by just hearing about, right? So you think about most of us, whether we are on the front line or not, as an intel analyst in the Air Force, right? I was not always on the front line. A lot of my job, especially when I was in Qatar, was reporting, right? So I reported when Marines died. I reported.
Well, you're still hearing it.
Yeah, I reported losses, and then it's a joint base, and then you get off of work, and you are, dorming with, you are in relationship with, in friendship with, Marines, Army, who lost guys that day, and lost gals that day. No people are missing, and so
and they train you to be one person, right? That's like
absolutely.
the thing. So you feel like it's you, even if you're hearing.
Like you are carrying the grief.
It's your brother, your sister.
As your brother, your sister.
It could have been you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's as easy.
It could be somebody you're sitting next to, right? Like, what if it's somebody doesn't come home or whatever? Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the leaving. I think that that's really hard. That you leave for all those years. Your family has to. Their personalities keep going.
Yeah.
Everything keeps going. And then you just come and one day you're like, okay, now I'm back.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my son is now 22. And so when I left active duty, he was 4. And, when he was younger, 3, 4, even 5 years old, like he really thrived. He was gifted, very intelligent, like, as we started to come back from the military, when he first went into kindergarten and first grade, we started to see some emotional disruption, right? And immediately it was like he has ADHD.
Because that's what they think of
yes,
everybody. That's
and,
what they say everybody has.
And I will admit, I didn't have the skills. And so, a lot of times I would say to him, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you paying attention in class? Sit still, right? Reinforcing the narrative, unfortunately, to even my own child. That there was something wrong with him. And it wasn't until years later after testing that we realized, he has severe separation anxiety, right?
Course.
He has severe trauma from me being gone for 7 months when he was only 3 or 4 years old, right? And I remember when talking to him on the phone and him saying, Mom, where's my bed? Did you go back home without me? Like, I mean, I say oftentimes, like, it is like, oftentimes literally an act of God, it feels like, to be able to, as a mother, as a father, to be able to be separated from your child for that many months. Initially I tried calling him all the time, and then we kind of realized it was very stressful for him, right? Just like adults get stressed. He stayed half the time with my family, half the time in Pennsylvania, half the time in Florida. Then he saw his dad in there. It was very stressful for him.
They don't understand why.
They don't. And so we had to try to give him a routine. We called every Friday after his nap. And, which was hard for me, right? Because then I only talked to my son once a week, but that's what he needed,
so
right?
That trauma transfers.
100%.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's dangerous.
Yeah, so now my son's 22 and, he's doing DBT.
Yes.
And he's, he has his own therapist, working through some of the trauma that, as a parent, right, it's a hard pill to swallow, right? Because I chose the military. He did not, right?
And you got in most of it, I bet you, for him. That you wanted to give him security.
I got in before he was born. Okay. But yeah, I think, you think about your future. And so, but it is hard. It is hard. As a parent, the last thing you want to do is be the cause of your child's trauma, right? And so I think it is a hard pill to swallow, right? To know that, like, I chose this, right? I chose to be in the military. I chose, to go away in many ways. And I say that to people oftentimes because people will stay in the military and then they'll be really frustrated, right? When they have to deploy and stuff. And it's just like, that's a choice, right? Like, you can't be in the military and not sign up for deploying, leaving your kids, things of that nature. And even when I was in the military, I am thankful I had really, really good supports while I was active duty, and I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah, I mean, you're thriving, and the fact that you got him in the CBT, you're teaching him what you've learned. Yeah. That's what you're doing. So you can't blame him. That's really good. You're teaching him what you learned, how to fix whatever, or how to better.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That's really cool. I mean, I think it is. But there's no way around it, right? We need the military. There's like, I wish there's no magic pill there.
Yeah, I wish there was a magic pill too. But, but that's all of mental health, right? I mean, obviously the military is not the only thing that creates trauma.
At all.
And it's not the only thing that I think. So I think that's true with so many things, right? Like, we can't, if we could do away with all the things that cause trauma and mental health, that would be great. And yet here we are.
But does it help? Does it help you in your counseling when you do counseling? Does it help you at all, these experiences?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think it absolutely does. I mean, I think that, I think any therapist, right, their life experiences are going to influence their orientation, and how they sit with people. And I think I often think that my experience, both as a active duty military, but also someone has transitioned from the military, and who also has worked corporate America, I think I do bring a lot of different perspectives to the table. I think it is easy for me to sit and understand and put myself in other perspectives and understand how people got to where they're at. And I think that's important, right? I think that's important when somebody is going to therapy and going to find a therapist. I've been on both sides. Right? I've been the client, and I am now the therapist. You know what I mean? I have been traumatized, and I am walking through healing. I have healed from some things, and so I think that does give me a very different perspective and experience, for sure.
And I'm sorry I brought you. I didn't know it was hard for you to talk about. And I'd like, yeah, dude. That's messed up. Okay, but I wish, I don't know, I can't tell you that, but people need to hear your story, because the fact that you were able to do that transition, I know you see it as well, you had a lot of support, but you had to have done something different, and because you are succeeding. And you're still continuing what you were doing there in a way, because you're helping your community, because your practice helps the community.
I mean, I'd like to think so.
Yes, it does.
I mean, that's our goal, right, is to help our community and to fill the gaps. I mean, honestly, I think that's why, I don't think that's why. That is why I got into DBT, as I saw the gap in the community, specifically for addressing people who struggled with borderline personality disorder. I think it was really misunderstood. I think for a long time people really believed there was nothing we could do and we should just not try. And I just remember even early on as in graduate school, I was like, oh, there's not a solution to that? Okay, then that's what I want.
Nice.
That's where I'm going, right? I don't know. Like, it's so funny because, like, I don't know if you know anything about the Enneagram, which I also love, but on the Enneagram, I'm a 6. And so that's all about anxiety, very fear-based, very anxious, right? But there's two different times. There's two different kinds, people who run away with their anxiety and people run towards. So I'm that person. Something makes me scared and anxious? Yes, let's do it.
Good, I love it. That's
so what they would call counterphobic or whatever. So I don't know. Like, I think that's how God wired me. I think,
thank God.
Just like my mom, I come from a family of very, very strong Hispanic, Puerto Rican women. So I don't even know if I had a choice.
They told you while you were
you will be strong.
Or else.
You will be resilient. So I think, I think it's a combination of things, but I think for sure DBT is one of those things that I saw the need in the community. There was a lot of gaps and continues to be a lot of gaps here in Central Florida of DBT clinicians, certified clinicians, things of that nature. And so, I'm thankful to be just a small part of that response.
Oh, you see, always being a warrior, fighting for people. So let me ask you, before we go, I know your time is like really busy, Miss Clinician, but do you want to talk about your clinic and DBT a little bit?
Sure. I'll share a little bit. So I run DBT Orlando here in Maitland, sort of Central Florida. As I said, DBT initially was created by Marsha Linehan in the 80s to respond to the gap in services for mental health, specifically to treat borderline personality disorder. She has a phenomenal memoir on how she got there, but really, if you hear about it, if you learn about it, you know it's very much a sister, if you will, to CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So she really took a lot of those skills along with a lot of her experience, and also added some mindfulness to it, to really package it in a way that really responds to people who struggle with high emotional sensitivity, high emotional sensitivity, high emotional reactivity. So, people who have a really hard time regulating emotions, have a lot of emotional disruption. It also helps with impulsivity, right? So when you talk about that PTSD and sort of exploding and being impulsive and drinking and things like that, right? So while it was created, we know it responds to so much. So, a lot of the people we work with, high suicidality, lots of self-harm behavior, things like that. And we work with adolescents all the way to adults, and we run groups, and we provide individual DBT therapy. We are what's called a full DBT program, and so just what that means is we provide all 4 components. We provide individual DBT therapy, skills group DBT training, and we provide phone coaching, and we participate in a case consultation team. And so Marsha Linehan early on said, if you're not doing all 4 components, you're not doing DBT. And so we tried very hard at DBT Orlando to stay as true to the fidelity of the model as we can. And so that's what we do. We have a lot of other clinicians in our practice, though. We added a little thing called Etc. So it's called Effective Therapy Collective. And so we partner with people who do EMDR, who provide child play therapy.
So you can do the other.
Exactly, because, one size does not fit all. That's and, while DBT is incredibly effective, right, we know that it's important sometimes to partner with other clinicians, other specialties. Which is why we really appreciate change. We love to be able to have partners in the community, right, who provide services that we don't and who provide high quality services. And so we love, connecting, collaborating, and working with providers in the community. And so we're lucky, for sure, blessed to have really, really great friends and people in our practice who do things that we don't do so that we can provide our clients full care.
You're amazing. So what you're telling me is that you have the top DBT center in Florida.
I don't know about that, but we have some pretty amazing DBT therapists.
Yeah, we do. And your offices are beautiful. I've been there. They're amazingly beautiful, comfortable. I love going there. Every time I go there, I act like I work there. I walk around like this is mine. And then you walk around the corner, I'm like, okay, well, I gotta get cat. This is not my office.
It is your office. Mi casa es su casa. Our office is your office. Yeah, we are. We have a phenomenal space. We really do. Nice. Again, we just have really truly been blessed. We can't say enough about just the good fortune of the people we work with, the people we've gotten to partner with, the space we're in, and
And you do a lot for the community. You told me the other day you do you go to jail?
I do. I help lead a group in Seminole County Jail. We partner with some agencies for women coming out of sex trafficking. Wow. We're hoping to partner in schools and stuff like that. Yeah, you're
working on that too. I'm telling you, you are a warrior for humanity. You're helping in so many ways. I'm very happy that you went through that experience. Well, no, wait, you know what I mean?
No, it's what shapes us, right?
I'm very happy that you were there, battling or doing your part, because all veterans are like you, so strong. That means our country's in great hands. So very happy. I'm happy that you're a counselor. And anything else you wanted to add?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. I think, and I think it is true. I think most, if not all, military veterans really do have a love and a passion, right, for humanity. I think that's why most of us do it, what I mean, at some level. And so, I think anything that I can do, even if it's just telling a little bit of my story, right, to help people come and increase services, increase access, increase support. I'm happy to be a small part of that for sure.
Yeah,
thank you.
You're
and I appreciate you. I appreciate what Change is doing to just even highlight this, right? You saw a need and it touched your heart and you guys respond, and I think that speaks a lot to you and your practice. It speaks to you and your practice and kind of what you and your wife stand for here at Change. So I think that's phenomenal.
Thank you for that. Thank you. You gotta give a plug, your website.
Oh yeah. If you need DBT therapy, if you want to even just know how or if it is for you, right? A lot of people haven't heard about DBT, so you can visit us at dbtorlando.com. Really easy website to remember, dbtorlando.com. You can see us on Instagram, Facebook. You can email us at info@dbtorlando.com. And even if you just want a free 30-minute consultation to just figure out if what the heck is DBT and is this for me, we'd love to chat.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Maribel. This is the most fun I've had. Thank you so much. Continue to be a warrior. We really need you. I promise you're doing a great thing.
Thank you. Bye. I appreciate you.